Hello and a very warm welcome to this particular session जहाँ पर हम लिटरेरी लेजेंड्स को कुछ ही मिनट्स के अंदर डिस्कस करते हैं। हम लोग इसके दो पार्ट्स को पहले से ही कवर कर चुके हैं। We've looked at writers like William Wordsworth as well as विजय तेंदुलकर और आज इसके थर्ड पार्ट के अंदर हम लोग सैमुअल टेलर कोलरिज को कवर करेंगे। सैमुअल टेलर कोलरिज by many critics is considered to be one of the most romantic of the romantic poets, जो कि हमें terms like willing suspension of disbelief, primary imagination, secondary imagination, fancy and imagination, ism plastic, ये बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट टर्म्स भी देते हैं। याद रखिएगा ही इज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट क्रिटिक्स ऑन शेक्सपियर के लेक्चर्स ऑन शेक्सपियर आर फंडामेंटली कंसिडर्ड टू बी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट सीरीज ऑल टुगेदर। अल्केमिस्ट जो आपका बेन जॉनसन लिख रहे हैं उसके प्लॉट को इन्होंने कहा था वन ऑफ द थ्री बेस्ट प्लॉट्स एज वेल एज अ क्रिटिक। ना सिर्फ दैट, सैमुअल टेलर कोलरिज बीइंग द जायंट ऑफ योर रोमांटिक मूवमेंट, हम लोग क्या देख पाते हैं? हम लोग देख पाते हैं कि he is the one shaping the entire romantic movement by looking at supernaturalism, psychoanalysis altogether. Of course Thomas de Quincey की तरह ही इनका भी opium addiction की वजह से life was actually considered to be a little problematic altogether. किस तरह से सारा फ्रिकर, सारा हचिनसन, सारा फ्रिकर जो रॉबर्ट साउदी की सिस्टर इन लॉ थी एंड सारा हचिनसन वाज एसोसिएटेड विद वर्ड्सवर्थ, वो सारी की सारी डिटेल्स हम लोग इस पर्टिकुलर वीडियो सेशन के माध्यम से प्रॉपर्ली कवर करेंगे। तो देरी नहीं करते हुए फटाफट से एक पेन एंड पेपर जल्दी से लेके आ जाइए, एक नोटबुक लेके आ जाइए ताकि आप एग्जॉस्टिवली सैमुअल टेलर कोलरिज को कवर कर सकें। इनके इंपॉर्टेंट वर्क्स को एक बार हम जल्दी से भी देखेंगे, जैसे फ्रॉस्ट एट मिडनाइट, डिजेक्शन एंड ओड, राइम ऑफ द एंशिएंट मैरिनर और बहुत सारे और जो काम कुबला खान फॉर इंस्टेंस जो ये कर रहे हैं। तो जल्दी से फटाफट से इस पर्टिकुलर वीडियो सेशन को स्टार्ट करते हैं। इज ऑल्सो पर्सन एसोसिएटेड विद द पैंथेसोक्रेसी सोसाइटी, दैट इज एन आइडियल यूटोपियन सोसाइटी ऑल टुगेदर। ठीक है, ही वाज बोर्न ऑन 21 अक्टूबर 1772। ये गए थे क्राइस्ट हॉस्पिटल एज वेल एज जीसस कॉलेज कैम्ब्रिज के अंदर। बाय द वे प्लीज याद रखिएगा वर्ड्सवर्थ के टाइम पे भी हम लोगों ने कहा था वर्ड्सवर्थ and Coleridge along with Blake are considered to be the first generation romantics, so the older romantics who were inspired by the French Revolution. इन मेंबर्स के अंदर रेवोल्यूशनरी स्पिरिट बहुत ही ज्यादा थी और तभी आप देखते हो कि रॉयल ड्रैगून्स, इवन दो ही एक्चुअली goes comes back within 2 months but he joins this so called rebellious group altogether. So यहाँ पर आपको कुछ कुछ चीजें याद रखनी है कि कैसे 1772 to 1834 that was Coleridge's entire career, or not career, basically his entire chronotope, his lifetime that we'll have to keep in mind. ये लेक पोएट्स भी मानी, लेक पोएट्स में से भी एक है साउदी वर्ड्सवर्थ के साथ साथ, और इन्होंने पैंथेसोक्रेसी सोसाइटी भी की थी। रॉयल ड्रैगून्स कौन थे? रॉयल ड्रैगून्स वर पीपल हु वर एक्चुअली इंस्पायर्ड बाय द फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन। फ्रेंच रेवोल्यूशन से तो डेफिनेटली देयर वाज अ क्लियर इंस्पिरेशन दैट यू वर एबल टू सी। आई हाइड माय सेल्फ सो दैट यू कैन सी दिस अ लिटिल बेटर ऑल टुगेदर। तो ये पॉइंटर्स आपको थोड़े से ध्यान में रखने पड़ेंगे। हाउ ही enrolled himself in the Royal Dragoons, he left it within 2 months altogether. Lake poets तो ये माने ही जाते हैं all over here. अच्छा, ये जर्मन आइडियलिज्म से काफी ज्यादा इंस्पायर्ड थे। they were also going, they were taking a trip to Germany, so you were able to see that German philosophers का काफी influence रहता है over his entire career overall, right? So please keep that in mind. And he's talking about multiple themes about his life in his works. जैसे for instance at frosted midnight, what are we able to see? At frosted midnight we are able to see he's talking about the loneliness that he experienced at school. जो loneliness इनको स्कूल में महसूस हुई थी उसके बारे में ये properly बताते हैं all together. Okay, and of course he was planning the Panthesocracy society, the ideal utopian society. ये society कभी बनी नहीं, मतलब implement नहीं हुई, लेकिन इसका प्लान इन लोगों ने जरूर डेवलप किया था सिसिक्वाना रिवर के साथ रॉबर्ट साउदी। दिस वाज बेस्ड ऑन द यूटोपियन स्कीम। विलियम गॉडविन से ये सोसाइटी बहुत ज्यादा एक तरह से इंस्पायर थी, तो इस चीज को याद रखिएगा। उल्टा एक क्वेश्चन जो आपके DSSP एग्जाम्स में हमेशा पूछा ही जाता है कि कैसे मार्च 1796 के अंदर कोलरिज ने द वॉचमैन भी स्टार्ट किया था। व्हाट वाज द वॉचमैन? वॉचमैन वाज द journal that he had started and it was supposed to be printed 8 days in order to avoid the weekly newspaper tax. तो इसीलिए ये 8 दिन के लिए आ रहा था ताकि टैक्स से एक तरह से हटा सकते ऑल टुगेदर। कुल कितने सोनेट्स कोलरिज लिख रहे हैं? हमें लगता है कि कोलरिज कोलरिज का आउटपुट बहुत कम है, लेकिन he writes close to about 50 odd sonnets altogether. That is something that we'll be talking about. अच्छा, इनका जो जर्मन पार्ट से जो इंस्पिरेशन रहा था, वहां पर you are able to see that he is also trying to translate works of important German writers like Friedrich Schiller का जो वर्क है Wallenstein, उसका ट्रांसलेशन, फ्रेडरिक स्कीलर का जो वर्क वॉलेंस्टीन है उसका ट्रांसलेशन आता है by Coleridge itself. So he actually translated the dramatic trilogy Wallenstein, जो German poet Friedrich Schiller ने लिखी थी. तो German influence is definitely something that we are able to see, which is seen in his works. So like I said, the Pantasocracy Society, this project was not implemented, लेकिन विलियम गॉडविन के आइडिया से ये इंस्पायर्ड था. इट वांटेड टू क्रिएट अशर न्यू इंग्लैंड ऑल टुगेदर, और ये रॉबर्ट साउदी और लोवेल के साथ इन लोगों ने अच्छी तरीके से प्लान किया था ऑल टुगेदर. ओके, सो हियर यू आर एबल टू सी दैट हाउ कोलरिज who's many times, अच्छा बाय द वे कोलरिज को एक एपिथेट भी दिया जाता है. वो क्या है? ही इज फेमसली कॉल्ड एज अ हाई प्रीस्ट ऑफ रोमांटिसिज्म. he is famously called as a high priest of romanticism. High priest of romanticism भी इनको एक तरह से बोला जाता है. And he said that he had a smack of Hamlet in himself. तो ये बहुत ही famous lines है all together, because obviously Hamlet भी कुछ काम नहीं करते थे. So he said, I have a smack of Hamlet in myself. I have a smack of Hamlet in myself. क्योंकि ये कोई काम नहीं कर रहे थे all together. Okay, so please keep that in mind over here. इन्होंने of course German idealism से इंस्पायर हुए, Pantasocracy Society लिखी, Watchmen को लिखा, willing suspension of disbelief term को भी coin किया all together. So those were of course important aspects. Now Samuel Taylor Coleridge की जो life थी, even when I told you at the very beginning, just एक movie है Pandemonium, उसके अंदर आपको दिखता है कि कैसे his life was actually he faced opium addiction, जिसकी वजह से his poetic output drastically reduced. तो जहां पर Wordsworth का poetic output बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ता गया, he was at his prime stage altogether, वहीं Coleridge का output कहीं ना कहीं कम होता रहा over a period of time altogether. But he emerged as a critic. We still see him rubbing the shoulder with Wordsworth. इनकी पूरी की पूरी स्टोरी रोमांटिक मूवमेंट को आप अच्छी तरीके से नहीं पढ़ सकते लिटरेचर में until and unless you're actually looking at Coleridge. So that's the important role that Coleridge actually plays over here. Now, इनका विवाह किसके साथ हुआ, इनकी शादी किसके साथ हुई? He got married to Sarah Fricker. He fell in love with Sarah Hutchinson. Sarah Fricker was the sister-in-law of Robert Southey, and Sarah Hutchinson was associated with Wordsworth's wife altogether. Of course, इनका जो love था, that was one-sided per se with Sarah Hutchinson, and that also kind of stopped. Sarah Fricker के साथ he moved away from the marriage in 1806, and Sarah Hutchinson के साथ भी 1810 तक he had actually moved he was out of that particular love relationship altogether. तभी 1810 के अंदर he is writing Dejection. Around that time, to paraphrase that entire turmoil, Dejection and Ode is actually best capturing his mood over here. Okay, so that is what you were able to see, that his opium addiction, the way that he was addicted to opium, to personal life maybe ये सारी चीजें you are able to experience altogether. Okay, now when we are looking at Sarah Fricker, of course, over here, I'll hyperset so that you can see it a little better. Who was Sarah Fricker? Sarah Fricker was associated with Robert Southey. She was Southey's sister-in-law, that means Southey's wife's sister, and he married her in 1794 in under social constraints, you can say. लेकिन 1806 तक इनकी मैरिज जो थी वो खत्म हो चुकी थी altogether. So that was of course about his personal life that we were able to see altogether. तो ये चीज आप याद रखिएगा. Of course Christabel, इनके important works हैं. अच्छा, 1816 में काफी important works जैसे Christabel, Kubla Khan, Pains of Sleep, all of these are works that we are able to see that are coming in 1816 that you will have to be mindful of. Okay, so please remember that. And 1817 में Biographia Literaria आ रहा है. So those are also important. By the way, he is also known for the Asra poems. Asra poems के लिए भी Samuel Taylor Coleridge जाने जाते हैं. And he had written a blank verse tragedy called Osorio. ये सारे questions जो हम देख रहे हैं यहाँ पर, they come in like pointers, they come in as questions. So please make a note of it. Osorio is a tragedy in blank verse जो 1797 में Coleridge had actually written. It could not be performed because Drury Lane Theatre ने कहा कि ये कैसा सा play आप लोगों ने लिखा है. और बाय द वे ये जो ओसोरियो ट्रेजेडी बिकॉज इट वाज रिजेक्टेड बाय ड्रूरी लेन, सो हुआ क्या था कि 16 साल के बाद आफ्टर 16 इयर्स यू वर एबल टू सी दैट इट वाज रीवर्क्ड रीब्रांडेड एज रिमोर्स, ठीक है। सो ओसोरियो जो ट्रेजेडी इन्होंने ब्लैक वर्स में लिखी थी एंड इट कुड नॉट बी परफॉर्म, तो 16 साल के बाद उन्होंने इसको एक नया टाइटल दिया रिमोर्स करके एंड देन इट एक्चुअली केम इन। इनकी कन्वर्जन पोएम्स आर आल्सो वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, ठीक है। इनकी conversation poems, the conversation poems that are coming in, there are 8 conversation poems that he's writing altogether, fine। So जिनमें से काफी सारी important conversation poems भी आती हैं, जैसे आपके एग्जाम्स में टिपिकली लाइम ट्री बावर, फ्रॉस्ट एट मिडनाइट, नाइटिंगेल, ये सारी की सारी conversation poems हैं, में conversation एक तरह से हो रहा है, that is what you are actually able to see over here, okay। Now like I said, of course he was under severe opium addiction, जिसकी वजह से इन्होंने अपने lectures भी complete नहीं किए। That smack of Hamlet that he talks about, right, that he had a smack of Hamlet that he discusses, so that was clearly seen over here in Coleridge's career, excuse me, sorry। So what were you able to see? You were able to see that Samuel Taylor Coleridge ka personal life was also having problems. Professionally also you were able to see that he wasn't somebody who was actually keeping well in terms of time altogether, जबकि opium addiction की वजह से इनकी creativity भी reduce हो रही थी, personal life में भी problem हो रही थी, and all of that sort of was culminating in his work Dejection and Ode altogether that you were able to see। rather Dejection and Ode के अंदर he's addressing to Sarah Hutchinson, but then later on he changed and called her the lady because of public reasons altogether। Now please remember, because we are talking about romantic age writers, so of course their entire association with romanticism is very important to understand। Wordsworth जहां पर कह रहे थे कि you have to use common language, you have to use a language that is used by ordinary men, Coleridge actually begged to differ। Coleridge said that the language of poetry has to be different, right। He said that यहाँ पर ये Kant से भी काफी inspired हो गए थे and he actually resonated with Kant। So what are you able to see? He was actually saying what Immanuel Kant also said, that of course nature आपको एक तरह से trigger जरूर कर सकती है, but that doesn't mean कि आप बिल्कुल ही simply writing लिखेंगे। He was absolutely not in favor of that, but Coleridge was inspired of course with French Revolution at the beginning, तो उनके लिए भी emotion, freedom, spontaneity, honesty, these were very important principles for him, these were very important altogether। और तभी आप देखते हो कि कोलरिज की पोएट्री के अंदर that element of supernaturalism, right, so he actually believed in supernaturalism, medievalism आपको दिखाई देता है। So you are able to see it's not that Coleridge was somebody who was completely isolated from the romantic movement altogether, but he begged to differ। कई जगह पर ये वर्ड्सवर्थ के साथ he was not meeting an eye altogether, so please remember that, with the core principles of romanticism being completely different from that rigid reason based poetry of the neoclassical period is clearly seen in Coleridge's case as well, because Kubla Khan of Fragment, of Frost at Midnight, या फिर उनकी जो conversation poems है, what are they? They are actually poems that are trying to get an outlet of your emotional state altogether, जो हमें याद रखना है। कोलरिज के करियर को टिपिकली आप 4 पार्ट्स के अंदर डिवाइड कर सकते हैं। I'll hide myself so that you can see this a little better। 4 पार्ट्स आपके कौन-कौन से हो जाते हैं? आपका फर्स्ट पार्ट जो आता है यहाँ पर he is experimenting। We are able to see that there is a lot of experimentation that is predominantly going on altogether in Coleridge's writing। अब देखिए जो आपका Rime of the Ancient Mariner है, that technically comes in your second part altogether, ये आपके दूसरे पार्ट के अंदर आता है, and this is like a very important work। You will be surprised to know that Killing of the Albatross or Dead Man carry करे ship को further, that was actually suggested by Wordsworth altogether, ठीक है। It is the longest poem that you are able to see in the Lyrical Ballads। It was written in 7 parts and it has total of 625 lines that you are able to see। Rime of the Ancient Mariner, ठीक है। Old Mariner जो है he stops the wedding guests who are there proceeding for the wedding reception altogether, and how you are able able to see that Mariner is telling his own tale as the narrator. तो वो चीज आपको पता चलता है. And very famous lines, remember, water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink altogether. Those are the pointers that we're able to see. So you will have to remember a lot of these aspects because it's really long. Water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink. Water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. And all of those lines, day after day after day, we stuck nor breath nor motion, as idle as painted ship upon a painted ocean. So, we were stuck all together. So, aapka Rime of the Ancient Mariner ho gaya, even Kubla Khan for that matter, right? Now, why was Kubla Khan so important? What was the reason behind Kubla Khan gaining so much of attention? First of all, iska subtitle hai A Vision in a Dream, right? The subtitle is A Vision in Dream, A Vision in Dream. 1816, of course, is the timeline that we're talking about. And, according to preface of Kubla Khan, that was composed, one night after he experienced the dream, where he's describing Xanadu altogether. And, Xanadu was a summer place of the Mongol ruler and the emperor of China, Kublai Khan. और ये तब purchases pilgrimage पढ़ रहे थे, जिसकी वजह से उनको एक तरह से ये सपना आया. And of course the starting lines in Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome degree, where at the sacred river ran through the caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea, right? So that is what we were able to see. So again, first part experimental writings, the second part was a little transformed because he had met, Dorothy Wordsworth and William Wordsworth all together. तो उस time period में ये सारे के सारे works आ रहे हैं. That is where you are able to see all of these works are actually coming in, right? Christabel is also by many considered to be, a part, even though actually published बाद में हो रहा है, but again these works, when are they getting written all together, how are they getting perceived all together? Christabel again is a very long narrative poem altogether, and this was prepared, so first two parts were actually included in the Lyrical Ballads altogether, but on the suggestion of Wordsworth it was left, तो तभी Christabel का part नहीं आ पाया था. And it's trying to tell you about, the central female character who encounters, the stranger Geraldine. Geraldine, ये question आपका आया भी, why Christabel किसको encounter करती है? Christabel is encountering Geraldine, who claims to have been abducted from a home by a band of rough men altogether. So again, this is how the story actually proceeds, and narrative style is definitely there altogether. Third phase के अंदर, of course, there is separation. This is marked by separation. He is getting under the influence. He's also becoming a critic altogether. Lectures on Shakespeare भी इसी time period में लिखे जाते हैं. So again, Coleridge is a very interesting persona overall. You are able to see his output of works, poetic works, literary works, criticism वाले writings, his opinions that you are able to see. ये सारी के सारी spread across हो रहे हैं, right? So these are things that you'll definitely have to keep in mind altogether. He also went to Malta to serve. ये कई बार हम लोग भूल जाते हैं. He himself exiled. एक क्वेश्चन बहुत ही इंटरेस्टिंग आया था एक PhD एंट्रेंस में कि इनमें से कौन से लोग आइदर एग्जाइल पे भेजे जा रहे हैं या सेल्फ एग्जाइल पे जा रहे हैं. जैसे इवन जॉर्ज ऑरवेल himself is trying to take up menial jobs in order to understand how it is to be a working class member altogether. Right, तो ये सारी चीजें आप देख सकते हैं. And of course fourth phase जहां पर he completely breaks away from Wordsworth and Sarah Hutchinson, and he takes a sort of a leap into becoming a critic. It is not important, ये मिल्टन की तरह नहीं है कि आपको ये 4 क्लासिफिकेशंस याद रखनी है, but experimental, major content second part में, third part में हल्का सा drifting away, fourth part में complete breakdown, from his earlier friends of the initial period altogether, and his taking over the role of a critic altogether. Even Pandemonium movie के अंदर I think it's a little harsh on Wordsworth, क्योंकि Keats का egotistical sublime जो Wordsworth के लिए use किया जाता है वो काफी हद तक दिखता है, but you can actually take a look at it. Okay, of course please remember, they are your lake poets. Lake poets Francis Joffrey ये term coin कर रहे हैं. किस तरह से older romantics है, because they were inspired by French Revolution overall. So that is also something that you'll have to remember. And like I was telling you while telling you about Rime of the Ancient Mariner, that actually में Wordsworth and Coleridge की जो friendship थी, that was actually a very important bond. It's not that you can just be critical, because what happened to their friendship at the initial stages, both of them really did support each other. जैसे वर्ड्सवर्थ को डिप्रेशन से बाहर निकालने के लिए कोलरिज played a very critical role. He rather pushed Wordsworth to actually write Tintin Abbey, write his works altogether, and even Coleridge got a lot of support in terms of fine tuning his works altogether. Coleridge was still directionless and raw, लेकिन Wordsworth के walks के साथ, Dorothy के walks के साथ, he was actually also getting more stimulus. It's like आपका एक friend, आपको थोड़ा सा आप intelligent हैं, लेकिन अभी तक आपको clarity नहीं है कि JRF करना है कि नहीं करना है, लेकिन एक friend की वजह से आप push हो रहे हैं, आपकी direction एक तरह से आपके पूरे के पूरे efforts को direction मिल रहा है. So that also is something that happened with Coleridge altogether. So Wordsworth का क्या contribution था? He told about the killing of the albatross, the navigation of the ship by the dead men altogether. So please keep that in mind. And here, unfortunately, this is what we said, that prelude technically was dedicated to Coleridge. Poem to Coleridge was the original name, and then of course it became prelude. Even Coleridge's ode on dejection is clearly trying to tell you about the parting ways. So that was the burial of a very beautiful friendship that actually gave us the romantic movement in literature altogether as we beautifully know it, right? Of course, ये चीज याद रखिएगा कि a major point of departure कांत का जो opinion था, Kant actually, Immanuel Kant, who's writing What is Enlightenment? Enlightenment is man's emergence from self-imposed immaturity. So Coleridge actually believed, he was inspired by the German ideas. Immanuel Kant se bhi inspired ho rahe the, and Coleridge believed that nature only furnishes raw materials of sensation. ठीक है? So nature आपको सिर्फ एक तरह का stimulus देता है. That is the only role that nature plays altogether. And of course, all those important ideas about primary imagination जो सबके पास है, secondary imagination जो एक poet के पास है, how he talks about the willing suspension of disbelief, how he's trying to literally lay his efforts in defining, and Biographia Literaria 1817 बहुत ही important work बन जाता है. So that is of course there. Of course, because of his opium addiction, you were able to see that there was a loss of his creative faculties, domestic troubles, and after 1810, of course, you were able to see that Coleridge's career ended, but Wordsworth's career was at its ascendancy altogether, right? हम लोग आपके एक और पार्ट को कवर करेंगे. We'll also be talking about Samuel Taylor Coleridge as a critic very soon in another series जहाँ पर हम criticism को cover करेंगे. But I hope you are all able to make proper notes on Samuel Taylor Coleridge. आपको उनके works के बारे में पता चला, conversation poems के बारे में पता चला. You were able to understand which all writings is Coleridge writing. Just go over the deck also once again एक बार पूरी तरीके से. And if there are any other questions that you're having, please feel free to put it in the comment section. Also, do let us know in the comment section any other writer that you want us to cover as a part of this series, Literary Legends. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Take good care of yourselves. Bye.